I get asked all the time, and especially in the comments from these videos, how do you become a pilot? A lot of you are interested in that process. So let me take a few minutes and talk to you about how I became a pilot and what the other alternatives are out there for you. By the way, it's a great job. I absolutely love what I do for a living. It's effortless, and again, it's just a load of fun. So that's number one. So I went through the Navy, and back in 1982, I was graduating from college. My best friend had gone to the Naval Academy. He was about to go into naval aviation. I was looking for a job. The job market wasn't so great back then. And he said, Steve, go down to the recruiter and tell him you want to be a pilot. So I walked down to the recruiter the next day, downtown Philadelphia, and walked in. And after a little bit of small talk, the recruiter said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I'd like to be a pilot, just like that. And he looked at me and he said, well, you and 40,000 other guys. And I looked right back at him and I said, I don't want 40,000 spots. I just want one. And he said, all right, well, I like the attitude. He said, let's do this. Let's have you come in and take the tests. And there's tests you have to take to get into the military. Back then they were called the AQT FAR tests. I have no idea what that stands for. I went in a few days later. I took the AQT FAR test. He called me back about a week later. He said, hey, Steve, you aced the test. You did really well. Come on back down. Let's talk about you becoming a pilot. So I went down and he said, next thing now is we got to get your college transcript and we're going to put a packet together. We're going to send it to the Navy. I said, can we skip the college transcript part? He said, why? Did you have a good time in college? And I said, I had a very good time in college. He said, nope, we got to have it. So I sent it in to him. He looked it over. He kind of shook his head. He said, all right, I'll put the packet together. He sent it all in. Fortunately, back then, Ronald Reagan was president and they were going to double the size of the Navy. I don't know if that meant they lowered the standards for a while, but a knucklehead like me got in and I did quite well. Thank you very much. I spent 8 years on active duty in the Navy. I flew the T-34 Charlie, which is a little hot rod. I flew an airplane called the T-44, which is a Beechcraft King Air. And then I eventually ended up in the fleet flying the P-3 Orion. I absolutely loved all of those airplanes. I got about 3,500 hours of flight time with the Navy before I put in my resume at my current airline. When I did that, they looked it over and said, yep, we like you. And they made me an offer. I got hired in December of 1991. That tells you how many years I've been flying for this airline. Now, how do you become a captain at an airline? Well, it's all based on seniority. You have to wait for the person in front of you to either retire, expire, or for whatever reason, get out of your way. And there's been lots of ups and downs, as you know, no pun intended, in the airline industry over the last 30 plus years. But a few years ago, I was senior enough to hold the seat I wanted to. And so I went from the right seat to the left seat. I spent a lopsided amount of my career as a co-pilot, but that's okay. I learned how to be a good first officer. And now hopefully I'm a good captain as well. I've got less than a year to go at the airline before mandatory retirement at age 65. That's a bitter pill to swallow. But in the meantime, you now know my story and how to get where I am. Now, if you want to become a pilot these days, there's always the military option. There's the Air Force, there's the Marine Corps, there's the Navy. Army even puts out some pilots. You might want to go down and talk to your recruiter about how to get into one of those programs. The other ways to do it now are to go to the civilian route. And I fly with a lot of guys that were civilian pilots and they're now sitting right next to me or they are captains at my current airline. And the way they do that is there's most of the major airlines, I think that United, Delta, and American have their own flight academies. Now those are already established flight schools, but those airlines will help you get a position. I think they underwrite your loan if you get picked up for those programs. It doesn't mean they pay your loan. It means they co-sign it for you. And I think once you graduate from those schools and then you build the appropriate amount of flight time, which currently is either 1,000 or 1,500 hours, depending on whether you have an aeronautical degree, one of those flight academies might qualify for that. Once you get all of your hours, they will guarantee you an interview with one of their regional carriers. Once you get on with a regional carrier, they've got flow-through agreements to the major airlines, and you're on your way. You're going to love it every step of the way. Now you know. I'm Captain Steve. Fly safe. Wait, don't go yet. Do me a favor. Become Captain Steve's new best friend. Hit the like button, share, and subscribe.